Han Li never intended to draw attention to himself, yet with a single errand he became entangled with an existence beyond comprehension, an unseen senior, an unfathomable restriction, and a name powerful enough to shake an entire sect. What began as a simple delivery soon spiraled into a trial where one mistake could cost him his life. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Han Li wore a pained and helpless expression as he spoke, his tone tinged with grievance. When this martial nephew went out to purchase a few necessities, I accidentally encountered a senior whose cultivation was unfathomable. That senior instructed me to deliver an item to martial ancestor Nangong. Not only that, he also placed a restriction upon my body, saying that only martial ancestor Nangong herself would be capable of dispelling it. The pale-skinned cultivator was momentarily stunned. He asked in disbelief, "A senior, could it have been a core formation cultivator?" Han Li maintained his dejected demeanor and replied with a sigh, This martial nephew truly cannot be certain. However, that cultivator claimed to be an old friend of martial ancestor Nangong. He said he had heard that her grand celebration was approaching and wished to send a congratulatory gift. He also mentioned that there were certain matters he needed to convey to her personally. An old friend of martial ancestor. This time the burly cultivator spoke, his voice filled with alarm. Could he possibly be a Nascent Soul senior? The pale-skinned cultivator recovered from his surprise and frowned thoughtfully. It is not impossible. But if that senior was already nearby, why didn't he personally ascend the mountain and present the gift himself? Who knows, the burly cultivator replied bluntly after a brief pause. Perhaps that senior had other pressing matters to attend to, or perhaps it was inconvenient for him to appear. Enough talk, martial nephew Yuan, extend your hand. Let us examine the restriction on your body. As if he had already anticipated this, Han Li calmly stretched out his arm. At the same time, he circulated spiritual power throughout his body, deliberately simulating a strange and obscure restrictive force. The burly cultivator grasped Han Li's arm and examined it carefully. Moments later, astonishment flashed across his face. The pale-skinned cultivator, equally curious, pressed 2 fingers against Han Li's arm as well. After a short while, his expression changed in much the same way. His features softened, and his tone grew noticeably less severe. That is correct. A fearsome restriction has indeed been placed upon your body. Judging from its complexity, it appears to have been laid down by a nascent soul cultivator. However, this alone is insufficient grounds for allowing you to ascend the mountain freely. He paused briefly before continuing. First, take out the congratulatory gift. One of us will deliver it to martial ancestor Nangong and confirm whether this person is truly an old acquaintance of hers. If martial ancestor is willing to see you, then you may ascend the mountain. Do you understand, martial nephew Yuan? Han Li's face revealed a trace of bitterness upon hearing this. After a moment of contemplation, however, he nodded in agreement. He reached into his storage pouch and withdrew a long wooden box, handing it over respectfully. Still, he added anxiously, "That is fine, but martial uncle must clearly explain the matter of the restriction placed upon my body." A faint silver talisman lay affixed to the lid of the wooden box, emitting subtle fluctuations of spiritual qi. At a glance, it was obvious that this restriction was meant to prevent anyone from opening the box before it reached its intended recipient. I understand. The pale-skinned cultivator waved his hand impatiently. Wait here for the time being. Junior Martial Brother Ma, I'm heading off. After issuing a brief warning to the burly cultivator, he mounted his magic tool and flew away, the wooden box clutched in his hand. Han Li could only remain where he stood, his expression calm on the surface. Although he was confident that Nangong Wan would recognize him once she opened the box, a faint sense of unease still lingered in his heart. He answered the intermittent questions posed by the guard who stayed behind. When asked about the appearance of the senior who had entrusted him with the gift, Han Li replied that the person had been cloaked from head to toe, making it impossible to discern whether they were male or female. After the time it took to finish a single meal, the pale-skinned cultivator finally returned, this time empty-handed. Martial ancestor Nangong has confirmed that this person is indeed an old friend of hers, he said curtly. She has instructed me to bring you to see her so that the restriction may be removed. Han Li was overjoyed. His eyes lit up with excitement as he followed the pale-skinned cultivator up the mountain. Be careful, the cultivator warned as they traveled. There are certain paths you must not tread under any circumstances. The restrictions here are far more formidable than those at the middle level. Even I would not survive if I were to stumble into them. Of course, Han Li replied respectfully. At that moment, a streak of blue light shot toward them from the distance. The pale-skinned cultivator immediately recognized it and halted his expression, turning solemn and respectful. In the blink of an eye, the light arrived before them and dissipated, revealing a middle-aged cultivator clad in embroidered robes. His presence was imposing, and his aura carried an air of unquestionable authority. The embroidered-robed cultivator swept a cold glance over Han Li and said sternly, "Martial nephew son, why have you brought a chi condensation cultivator to the summit of the mountain? Do you not understand the rules here?" The pale-skinned cultivator hurriedly bowed and explained, his voice filled with reverence. "Martial Senior Lan, this disciple is merely acting under martial ancestor Nangong's orders. Otherwise, I would never dare to do such a thing." Han Li quietly observed the embroidered-robed man and immediately discerned that he was only at the early core formation stage. Inwardly, Han Li felt no need to fear him. Nevertheless, he maintained a respectful expression and did not dare to speak rashly. The embroidered-robed cultivator froze for a moment, then asked in astonishment, "Martial Aunt Nangong wishes to see this person. Explain how this came about." "It is like this, Martial Nephew Yuan." Whether out of caution or indifference, the pale-skinned cultivator recounted the entire sequence of events without concealment. An old friend of Martial Aunt Nangong placed a restriction on his body. The embroidered-robed cultivator frowned and fixed Han Li with a penetrating gaze. "Let me examine the restriction," he ordered bluntly. Han Li cursed inwardly at the man's nosiness, yet could only comply. The embroidered-robed cultivator grasped Han Li's wrist and examined it carefully for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Interesting. This restriction is indeed unusual. However, while it is complex, it carries no malicious intent. It seems the person who placed it harbored no ill will." He released Han Li's wrist and said indifferently, "Go ahead and see Martial Aunt Nangong." With that, he paid them no further attention and shot down the mountain in a streak of pale blue light. In just a few breaths, the light faded into the distance and vanished completely. Only after he had left did the pale-skinned cultivator finally exhale, gazing toward the direction where the light disappeared. He muttered softly, "Martial Uncle Lan's incorporeal evasion technique truly lives up to its name, blue as Lan itself. Though he is only at the early core formation stage, even late core formation cultivators would find it difficult to contend with him." Incorporeal evasion technique. Han Li's heart stirred. Could this person be related to old eccentric Chong, whom he had encountered during the trial? By blood and fire. Perhaps a descendant or a disciple. Soon after, the pale-skinned cultivator relaxed and continued leading the way. Han Li, meanwhile, cast the matter of the embroidered-robed cultivator to the back of his mind. The summit of the gem-cut mountains housed very few cultivators. As such, the two encountered no one else on their way to a cave residence located near the peak. The pale-skinned cultivator spoke with admiration. "This is martial ancestor Nangong's meditation abode. Speak carefully when you respond to her and avoid mentioning anything unrelated to the restriction on your body. If fortune smiles upon you, she may even bestow certain benefits." After speaking, he turned toward the entrance and said respectfully, "Reporting to martial ancestor, the disciple has arrived." I understand." A voice emerged from within, carrying both familiarity and an unmistakable sense of distance. "Have the disciple enter alone. You may take your leave." As the words fell, yellow light flickered across the entrance and the stone door slowly opened. Han Li stepped forward without the slightest hesitation. To his surprise, standing just beyond the threshold was a beautiful female cultivator clad in yellow short-sleeved robes. She appeared no more than 18 years of age and possessed early foundation establishment cultivation. She scrutinized Han Li's disguised appearance as Yuan Kun and found nothing amiss. With a cold tone, she said, "Follow me. Martial ancestor is waiting in the main hall." Turning on her heel, she entered the cave residence. Han Li let out a soft breath and followed closely behind. Nangong Wan's cave residence was not particularly large. The foundation establishment woman led Han Li down a short corridor, past several small side chambers before arriving at the main hall. The hall was elegantly furnished. Somewhere within an unknown fragrant essence burned quietly, its scent faint yet lingering. Two exquisite flower pots sat in one corner, each nurturing a precious spiritual herb in full vitality. At the center of the hall stood a finely crafted square wooden table, flanked on either side by pale green straw chairs. One of the chairs was occupied. Seated there was a young woman dressed in white, her black hair flowing like silk. She was gazing down at a massive silver sword in her hands, its surface shimmering with a cold, radiant light. The wooden box lay open upon the table, now completely empty. When the white-clothed woman saw Han Li enter, she gently stroked the silver sword in her hands before placing it back into the wooden box. Only then did she raise her head and look at him. Her gaze was calm yet soft. The face Han Li had yearned for in countless dreams finally appeared before him. A slightly pointed chin, a delicate nose, and eyes that shimmered with quiet brilliance, every familiar feature struck his heart at once. The warmth he had buried deep within himself since their last parting suddenly surged forth, awakening after what felt like an eternity. At that moment, all thoughts and words slipped from his mind. Only an overwhelming tide of emotion remained. When Nangong Wan noticed Han Li staring at her so openly, she froze for a brief instant. A thoughtful expression flickered across her face, and she unconsciously frowned. She then lifted her head and turned toward the yellow-clothed woman who had guided Han Li inside. Her voice was calm and composed. You may leave. I wish to speak with him alone." The woman was momentarily startled. She quickly lowered her head. "Yes, martial ancestor." Without another word, she quietly withdrew from the hall and vanished from sight. Han Li waited until her figure had completely disappeared. Only then did he discreetly sweep the surroundings with his spiritual sense. After confirming that no one else was present, he fixed his gaze on Nangong Wan and formed a hand seal. A series of sharp crackling sounds rang out from his body. His figure abruptly grew taller by several inches, and a flash of azure light rippled across him, revealing his true appearance. "So, it really is you, Han Li." A complicated look surfaced on Nangong Wan's face. There was no surprise, only a faint sigh, heavy with emotion. Han Li hesitated, unsure how to address her. He stammered awkwardly. You already knew I was coming." The moment the words left his mouth, regret welled up within him. He could not help but feel annoyed at his own clumsiness. Nangong Wan replied softly, "Wana will do." His awkwardness seemed to ease her expression. Her brows relaxed, and a gentle smile blossomed across her face, illuminating her bright eyes and enchanting beauty. "Wana!" Han Li felt a surge of joy and could not help but softly call her name. The unease that had weighed upon his heart for so long finally dissipated. She truly harbored feelings for him, otherwise she would never reveal such an expression. For a moment, Han Li simply gazed at her entranced. Nangong Wan's cheeks flushed. She turned her head slightly and said in an indifferent tone, "What's so interesting about staring at me? Could it be that I'm more beautiful than your new concubine?" Han Li was startled. "Concubine, why? You knew about that too." Lowering her head, Nangong Wan snorted lightly and replied with annoyance, "You've become a newly appointed elder of the Drifting Cloud sect, and condensed a nascent soul at just over 200 years of age. How could I not know?" She paused, then something seemed to occur to her. "Was it that cultivator surnamed Tang?" Nangong Wan brushed aside a strand of hair and gave Han Li a mysterious smile. "So you're not completely foolish after all." "Yes, it was Martial Nephew Tang. He used a special method to send me a sound transmission talisman. When I received it, I hardly dared to believe it. After disappearing for so many years, you suddenly return as a nascent soul cultivator." She continued slowly. "In the past, I didn't pay much attention to matters beyond my sect, so I immediately requested recent information about the Drifting Cloud sect. Though it took some time, I learned of your general circumstances. You appeared out of nowhere, became an elder, left the trade fair midway, and vanished again. I don't know much about that part. But your concubine, she is still in Soaring Skies City to this very day." Han Li touched his chin, his expression turning awkward. "At the time, I told her to follow an elder back to the sect. It seems something delayed her. As for this concubine—" "Enough." Nangong Wan interrupted him gently. "There's no need to explain further. I won't complain about you taking in a concubine. After all, am I not getting married myself?" Her expression suddenly dimmed, her voice weakening. Han Li's expression changed slightly. After a brief silence, he asked in a low voice, "What is the situation with that? Do you truly intend to marry that person?" Nangong Wan bit her red lips, her eyes flickering. "Before I answer that, I have questions of my own." She looked directly at him. Why did you come to stop me from marrying him? Or to take me away? Without the slightest hesitation, Han Li replied with absolute resolve. Of course I came to take you away. I want you to become my wife. No matter who dares to take away the one I cherish, they will have to go through me first. That's quite the dream, Nangong Wan said shyly, her cheeks burning red. But when have I ever agreed to become your wife? Han Li smiled silently and said nothing further. Matters of the heart were not his strength. Sometimes words only made things worse. Before long, the shyness faded from Nangong Wan's face. Her expression turned solemn. You should know that during the year of the trial by blood and fire, my first thought was to cut you into countless pieces after you took my virginity. After that, I planned to use the vermilion bird band to reduce your body to ashes and satisfy my hatred. I guarded my purity for over 100 years, only for you to take it away. How could I not hate you? By that logic, Han Li said wryly as he rubbed his nose. I should have died long ago. Nangong Wan's face flushed crimson. She glared at him unhappily. Of course. If not for some inexplicable coincidence that softened my heart, I would never have spared you. Do you truly think core formation cultivators are easy to deal with? Han Li grinned, but wisely remained silent. After briefly venting her resentment, Nangong Wan continued. After returning to the sect for reasons I couldn't understand, I was unable to cast your image from my mind, whether during cultivation or secluded meditation. Over time, your presence grew clearer and appeared more frequently. I eventually realized you had become an inner demon of temptation. If I did not resolve it, my cultivation would stagnate forever. There were only two ways to eliminate such an inner demon. Either I married you and fulfilled the temptation, or I erased you from this world. With the disparity in our cultivation, the former was impossible. After long torment, I hardened my heart and resolved to kill you. But before I could act, the 6 Devil Dao sects invaded. I encountered you at the Yue sect's war camp. You were merely at Foundation establishment then, and my resolve wavered. I felt that if you could continue advancing, becoming husband and wife might not be impossible. Han Li smiled bitterly. So you intended to kill me back then? When I saw you at that time, I was overjoyed, but your cold indifference was a rude awakening. I was depressed for days afterward. Nangong Wan smiled faintly, but did not respond, continuing instead. After that, the Yue sect suffered a crushing defeat due to Spirit Beast Mountain's betrayal. Each sect began evacuating their disciples. As the youngest core formation cultivator, I was originally to be evacuated as well. But I had a close friend in Yellow Maple Valley. Through our correspondence, I learned fragments of Ancestor Ling Hu's evacuation plan and realized you were likely in great danger. I was shaken. There was only one thought in my mind: to save you. When I arrived, however, I was too late. The battle had already ended. Most disciples were dead, with only a few escaping. Not knowing whether you had survived, I could only return to my sect and assist the rearguard against the Devil Dao. I was gravely injured by a core formation cultivator and pursued by several juniors. You already know what happened afterward. There is no Nangong Bing in this world. I merely changed my appearance. This wasn't because I didn't want to reveal my identity, but because I couldn't tell you that a core formation cultivator came specifically to rescue you, with the intention of marrying you. And after absorbing most of your cultivation, I was even more embarrassed to face you. I never intended for you to join the Masked Moon sect. I only wanted you to follow me so I could reveal my true appearance and help you form a golden core. After that, we would marry. But who could have imagined that you would be so greedy, or perhaps stubbornly prideful, that you simply took the spirit stones and left me completely helpless? A faint smirk appeared on her lips as she shot Han Li a fierce glare, yet within her eyes. He clearly sensed a trace of delight. Of course, Han Li could not have known that had he followed her back to the Masked Moon sect. Nangong Wan would certainly have brought up marriage. Most likely, he would have casually agreed to become another woman's Dao companion, resolving her inner demon in the most disappointing manner possible. And the woman he married would very likely have been someone Nangong Wan personally chose. There is not much more to say. After our parting, Nangong Wan continued calmly. I returned to the Masked Moon sect. After my sect gained a stable foothold in the state of Beiliang, I secretly slipped into the state of Yue to search for you. However, the information I obtained was dreadful. I only learned that you had been hunted down by the Ghost Spirit sect. The specific circumstances were unknown. Not long afterward, I was discovered by the Devil Dao and forced to retreat back to the Nine Nations Alliance. After that, I never received any further news of you. I believed you had perished, and the inner demons connected to you gradually dissipated. Along the way, I condensed a nascent soul and smoothly rose to become an elder of the masked moon sect. And now, here we are. Nangong Wan's voice remained composed throughout, as though she were recounting events that no longer stirred her heart. Han Li's expression shifted repeatedly as he listened to her unhurried explanation. Many of the things she spoke of were completely unknown to him. Quiet sacrifices, and unspoken efforts carried out in the shadows. His gaze toward her unconsciously softened, tinged with warmth. After a brief silence, Han Li could not help but ask, "Then, what about Wei Liken?" Nangong Wan let out a cold smile. "Wei Liken, I encountered him by chance several years ago during my travels. I have never been fond of him. He presents himself as refined and noble, but beneath that facade he is nothing more than a thieving hypocrite and a lecher. I later heard that he secretly practices yin drawing techniques on each of his 8 female disciples. It is highly likely that he harbors impure intentions toward marrying me. That was why I rejected his first proposal outright." "Rejected?" Han Li asked curiously. "Then what changed?" Nangong Wan did not answer immediately. Instead, she asked, "Do you know of the 3 great nascent soul cultivators of Heavenly South?" Han Li's expression darkened. A faint sense of foreboding arose within him. "Of course, there is one late-stage nascent soul cultivator each in the righteous, Tao the devilish Tao, and the 9 Nations Alliance each only a single step away from entering the deity transformation stage. This is why the 3 superpowers remain in balance. As for our Heavenly Tao Alliance, there are 2 mid-stage nascent soul Tao companions who specialize in cooperative techniques. Together they can barely restrain a late nascent soul cultivator." He paused, then frowned. "What does Wei Liken have ties to one of them?" "That's right." Nangong Wan folded her hands together and let out a bitter smile. "Wei Liken's great-uncle is Wei Wuya, one of those 3 great cultivators. As the highest-ranking elder of the 9 Nations Alliance, Wei Wuya cultivates a rarely seen venomous cultivation art. With a mere sweep of his hand, he can take a life without ever making contact. His abilities are far beyond ordinary comprehension." Han Li's brows knitted tightly, a cold glint flashing through his eyes. "Did this Wei Wuya personally make things difficult for you?" "No," Nangong Wan replied, shaking her head, her expression tinged with resentment. "But he was certainly involved. You may not know this, but our sect's former great elder passed away and was replaced by an elderly senior martial sister. Although her cultivation is not weak, she is extremely shrewd and has long been at odds with me. While we maintain passable relations with the other elders, the relationship between her and me is utterly irreconcilable." Han Li's expression grew heavy. He sensed that she was approaching the heart of the matter. After gritting her teeth, Nangong Wan continued, "After I rejected Wei Liken's marriage proposal several times, he personally maneuvered for Wei Wuya to pay a visit to my senior martial sister. I do not know what they discussed, but half a year later, during an incarnation cycle of my female essence incarnation technique, she suddenly restrained me and forced me to agree to marry Wei Liken." Han Li was stunned. "Is your senior martial sister insane, using such methods against a nascent soul cultivator of her own sect?" Nangong Wan let out a mocking laugh. "Isn't it absurd? I never imagined she could descend to such madness. But Wei Wuya's conditions were evidently impossible to refuse. I later learned that if the masked moon sect agreed to this marriage, not only would the 6 sects expand their territory beyond the state of Beiliang, but Wei Liken himself would be willing to leave the flowing mind sect and join the masked moon sect after marrying me. 2 tremendous benefits gained at the cost of 1 person." Her eyes grew cold. For that she acted without the slightest hesitation. Regardless of my will, she released news of the engagement and prepared a grand celebration, intending to force the matter to completion before it could be reversed. Once the ceremony took place, I would have no way to withdraw. Han Li let out a relieved laugh. "So you never agreed to this marriage? When I heard you were willing to wed him, it nearly shocked me to death." Nangong Wan glanced at him unhappily. "There is still something I wish to ask you. After you condensed your nascent soul all these years ago, why didn't you come to find me sooner? If you had come even a year earlier, this troublesome affair could have been avoided." Han Li opened his mouth to explain. "It's not that I didn't want to see you, but rather—" He fell silent. Upon further reflection, even he found it strange. Although Han Li vaguely felt that Nangong Wan was someone he deeply cherished. For reasons unknown, he had never truly confronted those feelings. If not for the sudden news of her impending marriage, he feared he might still be hesitating, continuing to suppress his emotions rather than facing them directly. Seeing his silence, Nangong Wan slowly rose and took several graceful steps toward him. She looked directly into his eyes and spoke softly. "In truth, my circumstances are not so different from yours. Though our experiences and powers far surpass those of mortals, we are just as hesitant and unfamiliar when it comes to our first emotions. Even if we leave deep impressions upon one another, we are not an ordinary mortal pair. We cannot release all our passion in a single moment, nor allow our emotions to blaze like a falling star. For the sake of cultivation, cultivators have no choice but to weaken and bury most of our emotions. What remains is often only a calm, enduring bond, ordinary and restrained. But when I learned that you were still alive, I felt nothing but joy. I spent 2 full days in careful contemplation before finally deciding to accept you, in accordance with my true feelings." As she finished speaking, Nangong Wan extended her slender hand and grasped Han Li's palm. After a moment of silence, Han Li placed his other hand over hers. The warmth and softness of her touch brought him an unexpected sense of comfort. Nangong Wan's cheeks flushed crimson. She quickly withdrew her hand and shot him a bashful glare. Han Li smiled unfazed. "Wana, although you are confined here, judging by how calm you are, you must already have an escape plan. Otherwise you wouldn't appear so carefree." Nangong Wan smiled, a hint of slyness flashing in her eyes. "You're quick-witted." "Yes. Although I am under house arrest, only a handful of high-ranking elders know of this matter. Ordinary disciples are completely unaware. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to directly receive a sound transmission talisman from Martial Nephew Tang. However many restrictions have been placed upon my body to prevent me from escaping, the lesser restrictions are of no concern. They were laid without knowledge of the abilities I gained after reaching the nascent soul stage. I can remove those at any time and restore my cultivation. But there is one restriction that is troublesome. The heart restraint technique was personally placed upon me by that senior martial sister. She prepared it using an ancient record. If I were unwilling to agree to the marriage, she could use it to temporarily control me. She even used her own blood essence to create a restriction talisman, the core of the technique. As long as the talisman exists, I cannot escape her control within 50 kilometers unless it is destroyed. Fortunately, our cultivation levels are not too far apart. She can only force me to perform a few simple movements. She has no control over my magical power." Han Li asked thoughtfully, "Then your plan was to—" Nangong Wan chuckled softly, her tone carefree. "I originally intended to restore my cultivation when security was at its weakest several days before the ceremony. Then I would immediately flee far away. As long as I left the talisman's range, she could no longer control me. But now that you're here, I'll leave this matter to you." Her eyes curved into a smile. "After all, you're the one who wishes to marry me. I've heard that you easily defeated a cultivator of the same rank. You should be quite capable." Han Li frowned. "The heart restraint technique. That restriction is truly troublesome. Are there other methods to dissolve it besides destroying the talisman?" Nangong Wan waved her hand indifferently. "Even if there aren't, it doesn't matter. We'll be far from the masked moon sect anyway." Han Li's eyes narrowed, a cold gleam flashing through them. His voice grew firm and imposing. "It's fine. It's only a restriction talisman. It should be in your senior martial sister's possession. I'll simply go and take it. I can vent some anger on your behalf as well." Nangong Wan shook her head, lips curving into a mischievous smile. "I was only testing your resolve. I never truly intended for you to retrieve it. My senior martial sister is a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator. Her abilities far exceed those of early-stage cultivators like us. We'll leave quietly instead. At worst, I'll spend another 10 years slowly eroding the formation." Han Li fell silent. The moment when he would finally unite with this otherworldly woman was drawing ever closer.